Governments deny it. Militaries deny it. Even the mainstream media denies it. But they are here, and they've been here for a very long time. The Mutual UFO Network has been on the front lines uncovering the truth since 1969, and now we're sharing that truth with you. Welcome to MUFON What's Up with your hosts, Katie Paige, Christopher DePerno, and Katie Cook, exclusively on the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. Wondering what's up? So are we.
What's up? It is Tuesday night, and you're listening to MUFON What's Up Radio, the show that says discovery starts with curiosity, and curiosity starts with MUFON, brought to you by KGRADB.com. As always, we're brought to you by, or sponsored by, actually, MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, always asking that all-important question, are we alone in the universe? I am your host, Katie. I am the state director here in Colorado. I survived this big May storm, literally over 2 feet of snow. I was up in Guffey, Colorado in the beautiful mountain surroundings and was literally snowed in in the middle of May. So that was crazy. But it's clearing out here. It's a little cloudy today, but very nice. So I hope you guys are all having a great week. I hope you had a great weekend last weekend. I always like to highlight something for the upcoming MUFON International Symposium that will be taking place here in Denver, Colorado at the beautiful Sheridan Hotel right off the 16th Street Mall. On Friday of that day, we are going to have a special guided tour of the United States Air Force Academy. There's beautiful grounds. There's going to be a film that's shown, a lunch on the grounds. We're going to have a private tour, so many things to see out there. The cost for that is $65. And I think there's only like 25 spots left for that tour. So if you're interested in doing that, please go to MUFON.com, MUFONsymposium.com, and register for the symposium. Make sure you sign up for that awesome tour. Tonight's special guest is Kathleen Marden. I am so excited we got her. She's been very, very busy, and I'm looking forward to our discussion with her here shortly. First, I'd like to introduce my wonderful co-hosts. We have Katie Cook. You've seen her on country music television, and she loves all things UFO and paranormal. How you doing today, Katie?
I'm so good. Oh my gosh, we have Kathleen Marden on the show. This is like legend. This is so cool. Very excited.
We're so lucky. Yeah. All right, let's bring on Chris DePerno, Jerry, and Jenna. Chris is the state director for New York and also is on the ERT team.
No. He wants popcorn. He's so excited about Kathleen Marden being on the show today. He wants popcorn and it gets him constipated, and I'm not going to go through that. So absolutely no popcorn for him. Jeez, the next day, the house, you got to go. I got to get the gas mask again. Anyways, I'm so excited about Kathleen Marden being on. She is fabulous. You know, she's relatives to Betty and Barney Hill. She is an abduction expert. I worked on her team. I am so privileged to have worked on her team, and I got to tell you, she is the best, bar none.
Hands down. I agree. Katie, what do you have to kick us off today?
Well, you know, I like to start with a meme. Let's pull this up, Amanda. This one's pretty fun here today. So it's an alien travel agency. If you're just listening, there's a couple aliens there wanting to go on a trip. And it says, if you're planning a trip to planet Earth, we have a great deal this week. Abduct 2 Earthlings and your next trip is half off. I don't know, but, you know, if they came here, what do you think? Oh, there we go. Earth boring. The reviews are in. So move along. Nothing to see here. But that meme comes from Bill Whitehead's Free Range series. I thought it was cute. All right, let's talk about the pop of the week. It's not an alien this week, but it is a cryptid. Check that out. Look at the detail on this guy. I think we have a picture as well. Amanda, if you've got that. Yes, look at that.
Wow.
Isn't that cool? Gosh,
I want to eat that.
I know. It's such a work of art. This hunk of yummy chocolate looks fierce, but it's so sweet. And as always, you can order these at paranormalpops.com. I love that guy. And I mean, seriously.
I think we need soap. We need soap like that, too. She can maybe branch out and do.
It looks like
I'm not going to wash myself with a bar of soap with some animal. For God's sakes, Katie.
Better to eat
what
it.
do I want? A Bigfoot rubbing all over my body? Yes, that's my Christmas present. Give me a break.
You're not right. You're definitely not right.
Well,
don't worry. This one's just chocolate, so it smells so good too.
You wouldn't use it. You would just set it for decor in the bathroom
to scare your guests.
Yeah.
I scare my guests anyways. I don't have to worry about Bigfoot.
Well, speaking of cool decor, I found these really cool UFO ceiling lights. I want these in my house. Look at that. I love that. And of course, they show it in a kid's room, but I want that right above me in my office here. I think those are really neat. And you can buy these at litfad.com, litfad.com. I thought those were so cute. So, just dropping hints for Christmas. You got a little time to save up some money for Cookie's gift. Just saying. All right. Speaking of gifts, I look forward to this moment in the show every week. Christopher DePerno, what is the news?
The news. Okay, we got to get ready for this one. All right. Let's see what we got. All right. Astrophysicist believes alien tech may have crashed in the Pacific Ocean. Jerry and I, we want to volunteer with this guy. So Jerry and I are ready. There we go. Jerry and I are ready for this one, baby. We're going to help Avi Loeb. I think that's how you say his name. Top scientist is plotting a mission to find what he believes alien technology lying at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. Controversial astrophysicist Avi Loeb believes an interstellar object has crash landed on Earth in 2014 with some form of spacecraft. The U.S. Space Command released a report confirming that the object was from another star system. The agency concluded that the projectile was streaked across the sky off the coast of Manus Island in Papua New Guinea. Why can't they just come off New York City? Boy, would that be a wonder. It was a meteor. Professor Loeb, however, is having none of it. He claimed Wednesday that the object could have been built by extraterrestrials. Our discovery of the interstellar meteor heralds a new research frontier, the Harvard astronomer wrote in an essay for the debrief. The fundamental question is whether the interstellar meteor might indicate a composition of an unambiguous, I got that $25 word, artificial in origin. The U.S. Space Command released a memo confirming that the object was an interstellar meteor. But Professor Loeb disagrees. Professor Loeb has spent decades studying astronomy and more recently has trained his sights on the possibility that life exists beyond Earth. His bold claims frequently makes headlines, and he faced criticism from others in the field over his outlandish extraterrestrial theories. Loeb is calling for an expedition to find what's ever left of the object. He noted that a retrieval expedition could be achieving using scooping magnets. What the hell is a scooping magnet? Oh, anyways, to explore the 10 square kilometers region of the Pacific Ocean where the object is thought to have landed. My dream is to press some buttons on a functional piece of equipment that was manufactured outside of Earth. Yep, Jerry's already done that. Been there, done that. Many scientists have rubbished his outlandish claims, branding, I should say, them cavalier and irresponsible. Amanda, we got to show people what this Avi Loeb guy is. Roll that tape.
Avi, one of the great questions of humanity is, are we alone? Are there other intelligent creatures in the universe? And it's been a perennial question that humans have asked. I find scientists are actually on both sides of the issue. How should we begin to think about this question? What are some of the parameters we should use to evaluate this?
Well, first of all, this is the most fundamental question that we can bring up in science because it has a very broad impact on society. In particular, if we ever find aliens out there, there will be new fields of research on the interface of existing fields. For example, there would be astrolinguistics. How do we communicate with these aliens? Astrosociology, how to interpret their behavior. astroeconomics, how to trade about space resources, and so forth.
How about astro defense? Because some people are worried that if there are aliens and we signal them, they'll come here and eat us.
Well, it would be prudent on our side to first listen before we speak, But I'm an optimist, and I believe that we will learn much more from them than vice versa. It would feel like cheating in an exam where you have some fundamental questions that you're being challenged to address, but then you find a very bright student next to you and you ask, what's the solution to these questions? And it's possible that with a billion more years to think about the nature of the dark matter, nature of dark energy, other aspects of physics that we haven't yet explored yet, they have great insights that we could use and make a shortcut in our progress. And that would be wonderful. Perhaps we can cure all diseases. Perhaps we can move into space much faster and reach points that are very far away in a short time. And so it could address a set of problems that we currently have to which we don't have a solution. Given that, the fundamental question is, are we alone? And my view is that we're not special. That in fact there is probably intelligence far more advanced than ours. It may not be on planets next to stars, because as soon as technology develops beyond a certain point, that civilization will move away from their planet. My own belief is that once we move away from the solar system, we might get a message from outside saying, welcome to the interstellar club.
Okay, that sounds very glorious, but what are the scientific? Because we obviously haven't found anything yet. We've been listening somewhat in different ways. So what are the general characteristics to give some sort of a sense of what's out there, the likely percentages, and with the discovery of so many exoplanets, many in the habitable zone in very recent times, that certainly is providing one of the elements in the development of intelligence, has given us even more confidence.
Yes, we know that about a quarter of low-mass stars have habitable Earth-sized planets around them that could potentially have liquid water on their surface and give birth to the chemistry of life as we know it. Primitive life is therefore quite likely to exist elsewhere.
All right, folks, let me get something clear here, because I talked to Jerry about this. Jerry is a vegetarian. He ain't going to eat you. Jenna says to me that she likes anything that's in the back end of the cow, and you know where I'm talking about. Okay, between those two cheeks, that's all they want. So we don't have to worry about that. All right, let's get on to the next story here. Ow. God almighty. The truth is out there. The truth is out there. I don't know what the truth is. Pentagon researched how to talk to aliens and plan first contact with 4,509 space civilizations. That's pretty crowded. 4,590 space civilizations. Talk about, how do you get on the subway for that? Anyway, the Pentagon researched the best way to contact aliens and communicate with the possible 4,500 next extraterrestrial civilizations, according to U.S. secret files. A Defense Intelligence Agency document is as part of a massive Freedom of Information request, is a scientific study into SETI, an acronym for Search for Extraterrestrial Life. I always say, yeah, good luck. The report commissioned by the U.S. government states its goal is to ascertain whether alien civilizations exist in the universe, how far from us they exist, and possibly how much more advanced than us they may be. Folks, let me tell you something. They're so much more advanced to us, we can't even comprehend it. Look what we're doing on this planet right now. As of 2009, the only physical tools we know that could help us get into with aliens are the electromagnetic waves an alien civilization could emit, and we could detect it. Communicating with aliens demands the construction of much more powerful and radically new radio telescopes, which the files state were being designed. The report then focuses on how far away alien civilizations are, how long it will take humans to get there. It concludes that there could be 4,590 extraterrestrial societies in the universe, and the distance of the nearest one is likely between 1,933 to 2,670 light years away. You better bring your lunch. Based on the advanced calculations of the past and present, it adds that the scientific equations may become a huge computer code, which would end up being humanity's first Encyclopedia Galactica. Amanda, we got that tape on how to talk to an alien. Let's play that.
The idea that we are alone in the universe is, as one certain Vulcan scientist might say, illogical. And I'm not saying that just because I'm fascinated with the idea of aliens. Statistics are actually on my side. When you have a universe the size of ours, odds are there are millions of alien civilizations out there. Or maybe we have received messages from aliens. We just don't know it yet. It's not all that far-fetched to imagine aliens communicating in a very different way, like through chemical excretions, or being able to see magnetic fields or sense electricity. After all, we have organisms here on Earth that are capable of doing that. So that raises the question, how do we understand a message that might be coming in from an alien civilization? Well, to think through the answer, SETI held a conference that asked a similar question. How would we send a message out to aliens that aliens could understand? Now, if we look at the previous messages we've sent out, they're very limited in scope. You've got the engraved tablets aboard the Pioneer 10 and 11 spacecraft. There's the encoded radio broadcast that the Arecibo Observatory blasted off into space. And then, of course, there are the golden records aboard the Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. But all of these assume that the aliens have human-like vision and hearing. They also require some form of decryption based on limited clues and zero context. We're not exactly setting them up for success here. But the problem of choosing what and how to say something when you have no information about the recipient is nearly insurmountable. We even encode mathematics, generally considered the universal language, in arbitrary symbols. After all, how is an alien supposed to know that a stick sticking another stick with double sticks is an egg? Some of the attendees said we should be sending more simplified messages into space, and they used a doorbell as an example. When you hear your doorbell ring, you have very little information other than someone has rung your doorbell. Presumably, they did it on purpose, and they are capable of ringing a doorbell, and they probably have the imagination to anticipate what would happen once they rang your doorbell, so actually you've got more information than you first imagined. But other attendees said, no. Forget the simplified messages. Let's go the opposite way. Let's send everything. I'm talking about the entire internet, blasting it off into space. That way, the aliens have a lot to draw from. They can build an understanding based on the massive amount of context there, perhaps creating a Rosetta Stone for the entire Earth. It would be the good, the bad, and the lolcats.
I can't imagine sending the entire internet to the... And they go, we're not going there. These guys are crazy, man. And so, anyway, they're here anyways. It doesn't matter. All right, Cookie, what do you think?
What do I think? Yeah, don't send the internet, for God's sakes. Send Dolly Parton. That's what I always say. Send Dolly Parton. So this is all interesting. Yeah, I always thought math was maybe the universal language that could be shared. But like he said, maybe we can't assume they would understand that. If they're here, it seems to always be telepathic communication, right? So I think language is not a barrier. And I always wonder, could humans develop our telepathic communication and solve all the problems on Earth? Just because I feel like it removes a barrier. But you always hear people that have, direct contact say, I wasn't moving my mouth and they weren't either. So I don't know. I feel like we could send them all the info in the world, but they need to just come here and interact. And we know they're already doing that. So,
well, I can tell you that I agree with that guy. Putting one stick plus one stick equals two sticks. I think they're a little more advanced than that. They're going to say, dude, we'll come back in about 100,000 years when you guys kind of develop something. What do you think, Katie?
I agree with Katie. I mean, I think these, I can't presume that all of them communicate this way, but it seems that we know that they communicate telepathically. And maybe that's why our remote viewers and our people that meditate and people who have psychic abilities are the ones that can kind of contact and channel these extraterrestrial beings, something I'm anxious to talk to Kathleen about as well, because she's talked to so many thousands, perhaps, contactees. So I'm just excited to get that Galactic Federation Club membership, like in Star Wars, and go to the cantina and like have cocktails with who knows what. So I'm excited about that.
Hey, wait a minute. I got Jerry on rehab. Don't be starting talking about him, starting the cocktails again. I had him on off of tequila. Now you guys want to start doing the margaritas with him? No.
Is he doing good with that though? Is he
ain't doing bad.
Staying the course?
He ain't doing bad. He's putting on a little weight though. Those pants are getting a little tight for him. So we might have to put
alcohol will do that.
Yeah.
No, he's not drinking. He's good, right? Because he's not drinking, right? He's staying sober.
He's not drinking, but if you keep bringing it up, he's going to start jump off here and go run for the tequila bottle. He'll say, "Hey, what's going on, you crazy aliens?"
All right, I shut my mouth. All right, Katie, what about case of the week?
All right, case of the week. This one is an interesting one. It's local here. Okay, let me read here. This is case number 121497. It's actually a category 1, but I'm not sure I so agree with this after you see the unusual movements of this object. April 2nd, 2022. So it's a very recent sighting in Colorado Springs, Colorado. We get a lot of sightings in Colorado Springs. Perhaps military has to do with that. This occurred at 6:19 p.m. It was a 3-minute, 2-second sighting. This gentleman was working out, looking out the 3rd floor window. He noticed something shimmering. It stood out very clear in the sky, and he grabbed his phone and started filming. He viewed the object, like I said, for about 3 minutes, and it disappeared. It made frequent directional changes, although when you watch this video, so I just want to note, I sped up the video almost 2 times. So it's faster than how he recorded it. But what's interesting is you can either see a tail or an exhaust. And the more I examined it, it almost looked more like an exhaust to me. And it falls and it moves and it stops and then it kind of moves. And then, so interesting. The wind that day was 50 miles per hour. This witness was a space ops officer and has experience as an Air Force pilot. So that's interesting. I had an interview with the field investigator. Amanda, if you want to roll that interview with the field investigator that has this case, and then we'll run the video.
Hello, my name is Seth Feinstein, and I'm the Assistant State Director for MUFON, Colorado, and also Assistant State Director for North Dakota. I'm also a field investigator, and I love the field investigation work. We have a very interesting case here. The witness reported himself as a former Air Force pilot and a current space ops officer. Very interesting that he would make a report to have an investigation of his own sighting. Well, anyway, we received a video, and I was able to make a still photograph of the video. And I did a full analysis of the video and the still photographs. One of the interesting parts of the video analysis was we were able to identify the date and the time of the sighting based on identification of the aircraft that flew through the video itself. Well, with all of the forensic analysis we did, we were not able to find any known object out of what was in the video or in the still photo. We could not identify the object. So therefore, our case disposition was unidentified aerial vehicle because the object was flying and moving as if it was intelligently manned, but we couldn't figure out what it was. Thank you.
All right, Amanda, you want to roll that case video? And like I said, there were some cuss words in it, and I sped it up. So it's very interesting movements. And he does go down to the ground to kind of get perspective of where it is, and you can judge the movement, kind of how the cloud is. So, Amanda? All right. And then I have a couple screenshots that I took where you can see that tail on it or exhaust. I don't know if it's a tail of perhaps a balloon that theory was explored, or if it was some sort of exhaust. So what do you think, Chris?
I'm a little suspicious. First of all, I'm a little suspicious of the guy. If he's an ops officer with Space Force, he's not going to call MUFON and put this on without some kind of clearance first. And somebody's going to review this before he does it. I'm very suspicious of that. That's number one. And number two, I was waiting for it to change direction, go opposite of the wind current, and it wasn't doing that. And so it did take a streak down, which caught my eye. I go, wait a minute. I was waiting for it to say zip the other way, and it wasn't. So I don't know. It could be a drone, could be a balloon. I'd have to look at the whole tape and really analyze, what the wind direction was, what the speed of the wind was, everything before I could say that's an unknown.
Right. I do know the wind speed was 14 miles an hour. I don't know the direction without going back and looking at the case, but it does appear to have dropped, go this way, kind of go up, drop again, and then move. So unless it's in a current, I don't know. I found it interesting. Katie, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I agree with everything you guys are saying. It is unusual movement. It doesn't really move like a balloon to me, but I could see looking at that, like, it could be mylar and then, some metallic string hanging down. But I think the movement's really interesting on this one. And, props to this person for giving us perspective, down to the ground and back up a couple times. That helps.
Right.
But Chris, you do bring up an interesting point about clearance. So,
right.
This guy is an active Space Force op, right, Katie?
Well, the interesting thing about that is he did give a different name. We did extensive. I actually helped this field investigator really try and dig on the identity of this person by backtracking phone numbers and address. And he did not give his actual name, but we were able to connect him to people through the phone records and that. So maybe he reported it in his way of sort of being anonymous by giving, I don't know. So it's interesting the information he gave for who he actually is did not get caught. I don't know. There's some question there too. We have questions about that as well.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. If Space Force doesn't have the ability to do the same thing you did and actually find out who this guy is, we're in trouble. You know what I mean? So I would, like I said, I'm just not sure yet.
Yeah,
he hasn't convinced me.
At the very least, I would love somebody to take, second look at this case for sure in this video. So
yes.
Interesting. All right. Did you catch up with Bob Spearing this week?
I did. I caught up with Bob Spearing. He's going on a big vacation here soon, but he did send us this video. Amanda?
Hi, everybody. My name is Bob Spearing. I'm MUFON's Director of Investigations on the international side. And every week, Chris DePerno lets me show you a new video or photo or drawing that comes into the MUFON CMS database. Before I begin today, though, I want to say a special goodbye to our outgoing Director of Investigations, Doug Wilson, who is retiring from that position as of last week. It will be taken over by former DOI Steve Hudgens, who had the job several years ago and has returned to it. I would just like to say that Doug has been a loyal MUFON member and investigator for the past 17 years. And most recently, he was Director of Investigations after Chase Klutsky left several years ago. I have to say that he is one of the nicest, calmest, most professional and sincere individuals that I have ever worked with. He will be greatly missed. He did everything from training to symposium work to investigations to answering sometimes 60 to 70 emails a week from field investigators all over the United States. I just want to say I am personally honored to have worked with Doug Wilson these past few years, and I wish him the best in all his future endeavors going forward. With that being said, I'd like to do a case this week from Oregon, a video from May 15th. It is MUFON case 122358, and we can roll the video. The witness claimed he saw this hovering in the sky for about an hour and a half till dawn, when it faded away from view as the sky got brighter. I checked Stellarium, the online planetarium source that we use to identify things in the sky, and seeing that the object that he was watching for an hour and a half was in the northwest sky, according to the CMS report, about 10 to 15 degrees above the horizon. It clearly is the star Arcturus. So we can close this one out as an IFO. The person was looking at a very bright star. Usually it's Venus, but in this case it's Arcturus. If you use the Stellarium software, you can find amazing things in the sky at any time of day from any place on Earth if you punch in the time, date, and location of where it is you want to search. That's it for this week. I'd like to thank Chris for letting me share, and hopefully I'll see you again next week. Bob Spearing signing off.
Thanks, Bob. Yes, Stellarium is invaluable, and you'd be surprised at how many people misidentify these planets when they look at them for a long time. I would like to make a comment on Doug Wilson. Doug Wilson is a brother to me. He's here in Colorado. He was the state director, and I couldn't have been trained and by a better mentor than Doug Wilson, and he will be sorely missed in the MUFON community for sure. Invaluable. So Doug, I love you and I miss you, and I wish you well too in everything that you do in the future. So I just wanted to say that. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah, he's a great guy. Anyways, Cookie, I understand you have a new edition of It's Art of This World.
I do. It's a little bit self-serving this week. I'm hoping folks will come see us at the Pine Bush UFO Festival. And I want to show you some artwork that I'm going to be personally selling there. I'm excited about this. They're 8x8 prints, and they feature my little green man doing various things that he loves. I have a little video to show you these. Amanda? That woke me up.
Oh, that was awesome.
I want the cow. I'm gonna put it in my wife's room. I'm gonna get that for my wife for her birthday. So you're here, honey.
Oh, I will. I have so much fun with these. So here's what they look like. They're about this big, and I have so much fun with these. So I paint the green guy, and I just put him in all these different silly situations.
I want the cow. I want the cow.
I want the whole set.
I will make sure to set a cow.
I'll tell you what, make
you.
me a cow on the behind of the cow with an alien sitting on it, waving at my wife. Okay.
Oh yes, I'm sure she'll want to put that like right over the bed or something.
I'm gonna put it in her bedroom. That'll be her Christmas present. Hi, honey. I was thinking of you, baby.
Well, guys, come see us June 3rd and 4th in Pine Bush. We would love to see you. I'm also going to have my young readers books there, and I'm going to tell you more about those next week. But speaking of books, Katie, I'm wondering, are you going to be able to bring some of your books for sale?
Yes, I will definitely have. I will have some books for sale there at Pine Bush. So that, of course, is my work dedicated to the pioneer, Dr. Leo Sprinkle. This is 4 decades of letters that were written to him from around the world. So yes, I will make sure I have copies of my book there, and I'd be happy to sign copies for people.
Very good news. And Chris, maybe it's time to write the Jenna and Jerry an alien love story.
Love story. Oh my God, Jenna, don't look.
I was working on a cover idea for you, just to inspire you.
I have not talked to them about the birds and the bees yet.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay. Well, I'm just saying, plant that, for the future. Maybe it could be good. But speaking of authors, Katie, this would probably be a very good time to bring on our guest.
Wonderful time. Our guest tonight is Kathleen Marden. Kathleen is a researcher, author, on-camera expert, and conference presenter. She is widely considered one of the leading UFO contact researchers of our time. She is the 2013 recipient of MUFON's Research of the Year Award and the 2021 recipient of the International UFO Congress Lifetime Achievement Award. Congratulations, Kathleen, on those awards. Her interest in UFOs and contact began in 1961 when her aunt and uncle Betty and Barney Hill had a close encounter and subsequent abduction in New Hampshire's White Mountains. She spent 15 years in painstaking investigations of the Hill abduction case and continues to seek the scientific analysis of the compelling evidence. She has worked on 3 comprehensive studies on nearly 5,000 experiencers, 2 of which she initiated and saw to the end, and has 5 professionally published books. She has given expert on-camera commentary on numerous television shows and movies and has lectured at conferences and colleges nationally and internationally. Kathleen will also be presenting at this year's 2022 International MUFON Symposium here in Denver. Welcome to the show, Kathleen.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Yes, I actually want to start somewhere a little different. I would love to know your opinion on the last week's Congress hearing, congressional hearings, but more, I want to zero in on something that they said in that congressional hearing, which is that they want to kind of control who's saying what. And to me, it was almost like we're going to really examine these nuts and bolts, things we can catch on radar, and kind of leaving the contact experiencers out of the equation. And in fact, they even talked about, can you prosecute people who they think are sending out disinformation? And that was concerning to me. What did you make of the congressional hearings, Kathleen?
I was surprised at the supposed level of ignorance of those who were supposedly in the know. It was disappointing to me, but perhaps they had much more knowledge that they were not disclosing and were going to present to Congress after the public hearing closed. So perhaps that is what happened. I certainly know that people like Jim Semivan who worked in a high-level position with the CIA for many, many years and worked for the CIA for most of his life, has a great deal of interest in ET contact. In fact, he talks about how in the 1990s, these entities showed up in his bedroom and he and his wife saw them. And he said that many government officials and people in the military have had contact with these non-humans. And I have to say that I have talked to many people in the military who have either been abducted or had contact experiences. So I understand that probably 95% of the population is not ready to know about visitation by extraterrestrials. I understand that since the military doesn't have any control over this, they do not want to disclose all of the information to the public. I also know that there are individuals who disseminate false information, and particularly horrifying information, fear sells. And for example, there are people who are promoting the idea that the ETs are intentionally killing people, eating people, that sort of thing. With all the toxicity in our bodies, I can't imagine why they would want to do that. And if they wanted to do that, they could just hurt us, breed us and hurt us on their own planet. So I understand why the government does want the truth and not this fiction. But I also have a concern about their history of covering up the truth and wonder if they are going to call the truth falsehood and then attempt to bring some kind of retribution against those of us who have been investigating this for a very long time, experiencing this in some cases, and are telling the truth and presenting evidence as well.
Well said. Well said.
Well, you know, Kathleen, you know, I've worked on your ERT team, and I tell you, you were a great leader. and an inspiration to all of us. And, you know, hopefully I can follow in your footsteps and stuff. But I will agree with you. For guys who are supposed to be in the know, the one guy from Naval Intelligence and the other one from the Pentagon, they didn't know squat about anything. When they brought up the Maelstrom Air Force Base incident, they both looked at each other, and you knew right. And I'm a trained investigator. I'm a trained interrogator. I looked at those, and they didn't have the thing like, what do we say now? This was not supposed to be brought up. And they looked and they just said, we don't know what you're talking about. Even a novice person of UFO knows about the Maelstrom incident, knows about the Admiral Wilson memo, and they claim they had no idea what they were talking about. So I agree with you. I think it was just a whitewash to be able to say, hey, you go up there, say a couple of things, show a video, which scared the hell out of me. And I'll tell you why. It wasn't the video that I saw. It was the people trying to control a computer who are supposed to be making high-level decisions, and they can't even work a computer. And then they say, well, this computer can't do this. I mean, like, holy cow. You know what I'm saying to myself? These guys are running the country, you know? So anyways, I just wanted to say that. But first, I want to let the listeners know that you have a BA degree in social work, went to graduate school, and then you became a real profound and expert regression hypnosis person. I'm fascinated by this because you have regressed many people, even people who didn't realize they've been abducted, and you were able to draw some of that stuff out. Can you tell us about hypnoregression, how you use it, and what you found from it?
Well, first, I want to address the idea that I have hypnotized people who didn't know they were been abducted and brought out information. I did not do that. I will only work with people who have conscious recall of some of it and some evidence that convinces me that it's real. I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it for the truth. I would never give anyone a false memory. So I started my interest in all of this when my Aunt Betty Hill and I used to talk about Dr. Simon's hypnosis and how his pathway to the truth. And we would do a little bit of arguing about that. And so I decided to apply for a small stipend to spend a summer doing research at the University of New Hampshire on all of the hypnosis research that has been done in academia, all that I could find in the library. And I did that, and I wrote a paper. I used to talk to John Mack. He and I became acquaintances, and I even went to his office and talked to him. I was hypnotized by Bud Hopkins. I wanted to become familiar with his technique, and the best way to do that was to have him hypnotize me so we could go through all of that. But then I wanted to fill out my knowledge by becoming a trained hypnotherapist. So I did that through the National Guild of Hypnosis when I lived in New Hampshire, and did some of that work with experiencers in New Hampshire and the neighboring states. Then I moved to Florida and continued with that in my investigations. And I was concerned about the level of trauma that people were experiencing. And Dolores Cannon, who had developed the quantum healing hypnosis technique, seemed to have a kind of process that was very kind and gentle and would help people through this to gain a deeper understanding of what occurred. So at great expense, actually, I ended up training on the quantum healing hypnosis technique. And so I'm a level 2, which is they call a master level hypnosis practitioner of that. And so I've worked with many experiencers of contact, but it hasn't been my major focus. My major focus has been on research and investigation. And the social science studies that I've worked on more than 5,000 experiencers, and 2 of those with PhD academics. But the way that I do hypnosis is using forensic methodology. So, and Chris, you know that this was used successfully in law enforcement
Yes.
before it fell out of favor by the false memory syndrome advocates. So, but it is, in my opinion, the best method because you don't ask a lot of questions. You don't lead the witness in any way. You test for the person's suggested level of suggestibility and gauge their level of becoming fantasy prone. You don't want that in any way. You want to discourage that. I want the people that I work with to have true memories, not false memories from something they read or saw on a movie or television. So I use techniques that will prevent them from recalling information that they saw elsewhere and not what actually happened to them. And so I find that forensic methodology very important. Any question that I ask is just based upon what that person has already said to me. And I have already done a conscious interview, generally for about 8 hours with that individual, prior to ever meeting with them in hypnosis. And I've conditioned them to go into a trance rapidly before they come to see me. So I work with them. I have a comfortable place for them to be. I, as I said, do all that I can to prevent false information from coming forward. And they have an escape route that they can go to. They don't have to stay there if they're not comfortable, if they're frightened. I will work with them to overcome that fear, to give them reassurance that it's in the past. It happened in the past. It can't harm them now, that they can just sit back and not relive it, but look at it as it happened and report on it. And I'm always there to help people too. So if they're having any difficulty after the hypnosis, then I will work with them individually. And I also have a support group. It's called Awakening Souls. And the people who have been through hypnosis with me are in the support group. But it's mostly for people who have worked through the trauma and gained a deeper understanding of what has occurred to them. So that's essentially the type of methodology I use in hypnosis.
Yeah, definitely. We'll talk more about trauma on the other side of the break. We've got a little less than 10 minutes left. I love how you say you're not in it for the money. If there's money in ufology, I hope somebody will show me where it is.
There's no money in this.
You know, we're all in this definitely for the right reasons. And I think your integrity is always shown in your work. And I just love that social work heart that you bring to it as well. We can get more into your new book, Forbidden Knowledge, on the other side of the break, where we can really, really talk about that. But talking about your aunt and uncle, Betty and Barney Hill, I'm just curious, you mentioned memories, uncovering memories through hypnosis. Were you aware your entire life that you were an experiencer, or is this something that came up later on? Again, we can get more into the meat of the book in a little while, but I'm just curious if you carried that knowledge your whole life.
I didn't carry it my whole life. I had conscious, continuous recall of finding myself on a craft after my aunt was attempting to call in craft to land on my grandparents' farm. She was doing a secret experiment with a group of scientists who would script her, would tell her where they wanted the craft to show itself or to land. And apparently this experiment was successful because there were 2 witnesses to the craft that night. There was physical trace evidence on the ground. It was investigated. But the thing my mother and I never told, it was our memory of having found ourselves on that craft. And I have to tell you, I was scared to death.
How did that did you dream things, or I mean, how did that come to the forefront for you? Were you having visions? Did you have nightmares, memories?
I had memories.
Oh,
and
wow.
I had physical pain, as if I had undergone a surgical procedure. And that physical pain remained with me the next day, and there was a change in my body. And I didn't write about that. I'm not going to get into what it was. It was very personal and private. But so I did have memories of being on the craft. As a 17-year-old girl, I tried to rationalize it as I had to undergo a surgical procedure, and my mother didn't want me to be frightened. So she had arranged for surgeons to do this procedure for me in the middle of the night. The great difficulty I had was this was not any kind of room that I recalled being in before. I was on a narrow bed, and there were entities standing around me, and something terrified me so greatly that I couldn't remember precisely what their faces looked like for many years, until through a powerful abreaction, I did remember their faces, and they were grays.
Wow. And how tall were these grays? We only have like 5 minutes left before break.
I
But
was
if you
lying
want
on a table. I don't know.
Yeah, you don't know how tall they were.
I don't know how tall the table was.
Do you think it was the trauma that didn't allow you to remember their face, or do you feel like they manipulated you so that you would not remember their face?
I always thought that it was the trauma because in that abreaction, as I screamed and cried, that memory finally did come to me.
Kathleen, real quick question before we go to break. The scientists, you mentioned scientists. Where were these scientists from? When you said that your mom was calling down a craft or something?
They worked at IBM.
They were IBM scientists.
Yes.
Yeah, and no government people, or were they affiliated with the government? It's just kind of interesting.
Well, my aunt thought that they were affiliated with the government. She always thought that, and but this was, secret, and I didn't know the full extent to that until after my aunt died, and I was able to access that part of her files that she was sworn to confidentiality about.
Wow. Did they actually get out and measure like the marks on the ground? And can you describe that? What was the evidence that they found?
Yes, there were sort of a triangle of marks on the ground. Some trees were sheared off.
Wow.
About, I think it was 12 feet from the ground. And there was an area that appeared to be burned as well, or exposed to a high level of heat. It was over 1,000 degrees, according to the lab report.
That's interesting that it's a triangular craft, because I don't typically connect triangular craft. Oh, not just a triangle mark.
The marks from what apparently were legs were in a triangular formation.
I got you. So it's probably a disc.
That's what I understand. Yes.
Thank goodness you're in a family where you could talk about this, though. That, at least other people in your family were experiencers. I really feel for people that truly think they're 100% alone.
But I couldn't talk very much about it because the other members in my family would say they, meaning the ETs, don't want us to talk about this. Make sure you never tell anyone about this. And I didn't.
Wow, that's amazing. I real quick question for you before we go to break here. the aliens that you experience, things of that matter. What did you get a consciousness that they're going to do more than just talk to you several times? Was it going to be a one-time thing? Did you have in your mind, hey, maybe this is just a one-time thing, but you realize this is going to be several times that you're going to be interacting with these guys?
I knew nothing in the beginning about what their plan was or what they did, what they intended to do. It was the repeat experiences that convinced me they had some kind of interest in taking me periodically throughout my life. And I found out from them that they were extraordinarily concerned about my exposure to toxins in the environment. They told me that they had to take tissue samples to test my body for toxicity. And I didn't realize it at the time, but the barrel factory they cleaned out barrels, and the chemicals, which were neurotoxins, leached into the stream that went into the lake near my home. They said it didn't go into the wells, but I know that it did, because when I was an adult and I went back to visit, every child on that street had ADHD or bipolar or some other disability. And you can convince me that this was all by coincidence.
Wow, that is fascinating.
Also,
all right.
I grew up 20 miles from a nuclear base. And coincidentally, Betty and Barney lived within a couple of miles of that nuclear base.
Okay. Wow. I am just blown away by that information. It's time for a quick break. Some more with Kathleen on the other side of the break. And we're going to get more into this ADHD, hyperactivity, bipolar. I'm fascinated by that. All right. See you on the other side.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
Scrolling all day, time can disappear. Wanna make it count, why not volunteer?
Posting pics of your food, that takes up time. Time, you got time to binge all of season 9, though it got so bad.
Time, you got time. We're gonna grow back and be the same browse you had.
Just a few hours to keep families from harm. Help us end home fires with Sound the Alarm.
Volunteer for a day to install free smoke alarms in your community.
Discover the Observation Deck, a one-of-a-kind virtual event platform that takes video conferencing to the next level by using avatars to navigate a campus. There's so many areas and activities to choose from. There's a 1,000-seat auditorium, an expo hall, a nightclub, and even a beach. So come attend a conference, take a class, or hear a lecture on the incredible Observation Deck campus. Go to theobservationdk.com.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected. Only at kgradb.com.
Okay, Kathleen, I have so many questions about this. First, the first question that comes to mind when you're talking about toxins in the soil and perhaps the water is: were there cattle mutilations out there?
Not that I'm aware of. I can tell you that something that involved the cattle, and that is that in this area as well, there were out west above ground nuclear testing, and the radiation carried in the clouds and then rained down onto the grass that the cows ate. And so there's been a problem with thyroid disease in adults, people in my age group, who grew up drinking that milk. Fortunately for me, I didn't like milk. I had to hold my nose if I was going to drink any of it at all. So I don't have that problem, but I know many people who do.
That's so interesting, because that's always been a hypothesis or theory of mine, out here in close to these nuclear facilities and Buckley Air Force and the cattle mutilations and all that. But also, I suffered ADHD, hyperactivity, and was told, no artificial colors, sweeteners, and that. And through the years, have you, as a follow-up to the ADHD and bipolar and that, through the thousands of contactees, is this a common thread that you see weave between them?
No, it's not something that I've even asked about with experiencers. The common thread among experiencers is autoimmune disorders, such as rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, some other conditions that are autoimmune disorders.
You mentioned being not that far from a nuclear base. Cheryl Costa, has studied so much data, hotspots all over the world. And we do know about them being around nuclear facilities for sure. But she said they seem extremely concerned about the environment. And we hear so often from contactees, that they get this message that they're concerned about the environment, or they just seem to spontaneously become obsessed with the environment, whether it's collecting seeds or just wanting to, protect the environment around them. It just seems to really awaken something in us. So I keep coming back to thinking that is the main goal. I know we don't know exactly why the visitors are here. There could be a lot of reasons, but can you just touch on how much you've come across that in all of your studies?
Well, I have to say absolutely that the extraterrestrials, non-humans, have been giving this message to humanity dating back as far as 1954 in a case that I have of government communication with correspondence records that I wrote about in Forbidden Knowledge. And so, yes, the experiencers taken to craft are educated about the ET's concern about our use of nuclear weapons, about their concern over the possibility of an environmental collapse, and have educated experiencers to be good stewards to their environment.
Wow, that's amazing. Kathleen, question for you, something that you mentioned before. We know that you're an experiencer, and that we know that experiencers have multi-generational effects. They've gone generation after generation. But what about the other parts of the family, that spring off, like cousins and aunts and uncles and stuff? Do you see a lot of that, or did they just focus on one type of generation?
On the Mutual UFO Network's ERT study on 516 experiencers, we discovered that about 60% were being taken along family genetic lines. And so it wasn't just one generation, it was intergenerational along that family line.
Do you, Kathleen, have any opinion on the Rh negative theory?
I have some statistics.
Okay.
We asked for in the MUFON study, what is your blood type? And the response that we got was that there is a significantly elevated level of Rh negative blood among experiencers. It's about 15 to 16% in the general population. It was 31% among the experiencers overall. And then Dr. Don C. Dundary was able to identify those who have UFO abduction syndrome by administering the American Personality Inventory, and it was elevated even more among those who were in the abductee group. So still, Rh positive blood is in the majority of experiencers, but over 30% significantly elevated Rh negative blood.
And any separation between like O, A, B, anything like that? Is there more A type? Because I hear that often.
I don't have the statistics in front of me. We asked for the blood type, but I'm sorry, I don't have
a lot of people don't know their blood type. I'm always surprised by that because I always ask and people just like, I have no idea. So everybody go get your blood checked.
We found that in our study too. It was sort of disappointing that quite a significant number didn't know their blood types. So we were only able to draw information on over 300 people rather than on 516.
Yeah. I didn't know my blood type until recently for some reason. So what I'm truly ignorant on this. I just don't know what it is about Rh negative. Like, okay, maybe we don't know why they're interested in it, but just speaking on a more human level, is there something really unique about it? Does it make you more resilient to viruses? Like, do you have any idea?
Well, I can tell you that O negative is the universal donor blood. Also, I wonder if this has been going on for a very long time. And so this is just a family genetic line that came from elsewhere. Now, in the Basque region of Spain, we know that there is generally high level of Rh negative blood. So perhaps that is part of it.
Yeah. Isn't negative, it's a mutation, correct? I thought like they don't know how the Rh negative came in to, our system, and it was a mutation of some sort, and that a lot of people that have the Rh negative also have the green eye mutation, and maybe the ETs are interested in that type of mutation in our human bodies. Have you heard that, Kathleen? Or?
Yes, well, Dr. George Medich, who is the new director of the ERT, is a medical doctor. He's a retired orthopedic surgeon. And he's had a real interest in blood types and in eye color, too. So that's something that he is collecting data on now.
Oh, good. Good.
What if I'd love to get into forbidden knowledge. Let's talk about the new book and why this was the right time for you to start telling more of your own story.
Well, I decided to start telling more because of people who were closely connected to the federal government were coming forward and being far more open about their own stories and about the government's interest in all of this. So I felt that I could come forward at this point. In addition to that, I'm just getting older, and earlier there was a great deal of ridicule. I didn't want to spend my life defending myself. I wanted to spend my life as a serious researcher and investigator. And that's what I did. But now I thought, well, it's a good time to come forward and let people know what I really know. Because for many years, I was receiving information directly from these extraterrestrials who were taking me to craft. And I couldn't talk about it. I could only talk about it when I did one of these social research studies and other people also stated that information that I had been given. So it sort of verified, it confirmed what I had experienced. And, that's what I did to protect myself. And, I just felt safe in coming forward. Now I'm at a point where if somebody wants to ridicule me, I'm not going to try to defend myself. It doesn't matter, because I am seeking the truth and continue to seek the truth, and have a lot of research findings that I believe tell the truth. And I thought it was time for people to know about this.
Kathleen, you don't have to defend yourself, because anybody who knows you knows that you're an honest, sincere, and serious researcher, and you're held in high esteem by the whole ufology community. And
thank you.
So you don't have to worry about that. But I was going to ask you a question about Betty at Barney Hill. I'm going to save it for a little later in the show, because you hit on something that I have talked to Experiencer about. Experiencer have told me that they feel they've been downloaded with information. They haven't been able to know what that information is, but they've gotten a message that when the right time comes, they will be able to understand that information and carry forth with it. Can you tell us if you've had that information given to you, and can you talk about it, or have you talked to experience that have the same type of thing?
Yes, I've had downloads of information. The modus operandi seems to have changed. So I have a very powerful tingling feeling in my body when they come into my environment, and have sometimes given me a download of information. Oftentimes I forget about it unless I write it down immediately, or write it down when it is happening. For some reason, I end up with amnesia, although I know it has happened. I can't remember what was downloaded. So, but I've worked on that. And also, I have been given eye-to-eye contact, sort of telepathic information from the ETs, and they've told me that they have been taking my family for 6 generations. They have told me that they're extraordinarily concerned that our technological development is out of sync with our spiritual growth. And when this occurs, they've seen it happen before. It has resulted in the disintegration of the species, is their word for it, disintegration. And so I had been holding that information as well for a very long time. But it's important for people to know this information. They're concerned, as I said before, about environmental collapse, about nuclear war, and that we remain primitive entities, although they are taking people along family lines to attempt to upgrade humanity. And so apparently they're taking a lot of people.
Yeah. So you mentioned, Kathleen, that you've been under hypnosis. How many times have you been under hypnosis? And what is sort of the most maybe surprising thing that came out through your hypnosis that you were like, wow, that's really interesting? Can you share that if you want to share that?
I've only been under hypnosis to remember this. In training, I was under hypnosis a lot, but not to bring out further memories about my contact experiences.
Oh, interesting.
So hypnosis about my contact experiences, maybe 6 or 7 times. And the most astounding thing that really surprised me was having a clear memory of being 3 years old, of being on a craft. There was a little boy with me, and we were, through thought, elevating this, what looked like a flat beach stone, or it was smooth, this disc, through thought. raising it up into the air, and we were being watched by this gray entity who was standing there, and there was a little girl too, and that little girl looked an awful lot like me, only older. And she was wearing a plaid jumper with a blouse underneath it. She had kind of golden blonde hair, and I remember the curls. And she was absolutely thrilled. She was delighted with what we were doing. And that was really astounding. I don't know who that girl is. I never had another sister that I'm aware of, but did I have another sister who lived on the craft? I don't know.
Or maybe a parallel life.
Yeah, I got goosebumps like from head to toe.
You're living here and there, perhaps at the same time. So many people have a consciousness shift after contact, or at least after they start remembering that they've had contact. Obviously, many people, they might be in their mid-30s and go, oh, I think I had contact last night. And then they find out, of course, that it happened their whole life when they really dig into it. But I'm just wondering what kind of consciousness shift, or perhaps other skills, you know, things that have opened up in your life the more you've explored the fact that you've had contact.
There definitely has been a consciousness shift from fear, from terror, from feeling like I was a victim and terrible things were happening to me, to realizing that I was assisting in their attempt to save humanity from ourselves, to move us along on an evolutionary scale, to contribute to our survival, so that one day we might be able to take our place in the cosmic kindergarten. We're not ready to do that yet. We're too primitive, and they fear us. They don't want us to take our brand of nationalism and weaponry and warlike behavior out to them. And so this is a huge concern. And so I view them, at least the ones that I have interacted with, differently than I used to when I was younger.
You said something that really is frightening to me, and something clicked, Kathleen. I mean, you're just a genius when it comes to this stuff. And it makes me think, you talked about dreams of people, experiencers having dreams of nuclear war. And I've talked to people, you've talked to people about it. But could they be taking us, hybridizing us, you know, the hybridization program? Could they be taking us because maybe they really feel we're going to disintegrate ourselves and they can repopulate us? Saying, look, guys, you're going down the wrong road here. We've been trying to tell you. We've been trying to help you. But in case you don't listen to us, we got a whole bunch of other people here that can repopulate this earth. Because, you know, the earth is a pretty good place to live naturally. I mean, trees, water, you got all the resources in the world. It's not like a cold, forbidden planet. So if you repopulate it, you could maybe put us on the right track. What do you think?
Well, they have informed me and others that I've worked with, and I'm going to combine all of it together, that we know that they have been taking samples since the 1950s, soil samples, plant samples, animal samples, from around the earth. They've been taking human genetic material from around the earth. And they have told some people that they are collecting all of this so that they will be able to decide who is going to survive the collapse of the Earth's environment.
Oh, wow.
And so that's pretty frightening.
Yeah, very frightening.
Like an art.
And maybe all this now starts to make sense of, you know, after talking to you, Kathleen, with this. Folks, I encourage you to get her books, for God's sakes, because if we're going down this wrong path and we're looking at this, these guys are saying, hey, you know, maybe we ought to start collecting all this stuff, changing these guys' species and stuff. because there's a good chance we could disintegrate. I mean, look what's going on in the world now. I mean, you know, there's some knuckleheads that got their fingers on nuclear triggers, and they, you know, we could be gone in about 20 minutes. You know, that's not even enough time to finish a beer, for God's sake.
Yeah,
Right.
you know, that's true, and it's very frightening.
It is.
And you know, I have attempted to disseminate my message around the world through groups that I've spoken with on radio shows, but the mainstream isn't listening. The people who are listening are the people who have an interest in this field. And it's the mainstream that I'm concerned about, because they go on with life as if there's no real threat, and life just happens. And you know, it's so important. I hypnotized Calvin Parker. I was flown out to New Orleans and then driven to Pascagoula and did hypnosis with him. And the most riveting part of all of that for me was when he was shown a nuclear war and people's faces melting off, people dying, and then the after effects and the starvation and the illness. And, you know, Calvin's father worked for the Nuclear Energy Commission.
Wow.
And I think that what the ETs didn't realize all through this is that experiencers should have been disseminating that information to the public for many, many years. But they sort of had this personal interest, but didn't know where it came from until they had hypnosis. And so many have not had hypnosis.
So interesting. So the warning for you to not talk about it, to be quiet about this, did that come from like your family and the adults in your life? Did that come from you personally because you were fearful of it? Or did that come from the ETs? Because if it's important for us to get that message out about the planet, you know, I'm just curious about that.
Yeah. It was my family, my mother.
Oh, your family. Okay.
Yeah, my mother told me, don't talk about it. They don't want you to talk about it. So, you know, then I didn't.
Interesting. Can we circle back to and talk a little bit about the trauma piece? I wanted to revisit that. You know, what experiencers go through, and in particular, how that can go from a very negative, scary experience and how that transforms itself and what you've seen with experiencers with that.
Yes, it's very common in the beginning to feel trauma, even if the experience ends up being very positive. But you know, for so many experiencers who have been taken over a lifetime, when they've had memories about this, they do not see the ETs as being their friends. They just know that these non-humans come into their environment, take them away, and if they've read books about what happens and they haven't had hypnosis, then they're come to believe that they're being used like lab rats, and that they're not cared for. Now, I disagree with that from the memories that I carry with me. I used to think that I was just a lab rat, but when I really think about the memories that I carried, I was terrified when they came into my environment. But once I was on the craft, I wasn't fearful. They showed me things. They told me things. They projected the most profound feeling of love toward me. I've never felt something like that on Earth from any Earthling. And I know that they always told me they were trying to raise my vibrational frequency. And I didn't know what that meant. I just had a strong tingling through my body, you know, like this electrical tingling when they were doing that procedure.
Well, Okay, so it felt very traumatic when it was happening when you were young, because it is very, very scary. Obviously, you've made peace with it now. I'm just wondering what advice you have for other experiencers that are trying to be okay with their experiences. But like I said, we talk about this all the time on this show. You know, if something's standing over you at 3 a.m. and you can't speak and you can't move, I mean, it is a very normal human response to be terrified. And I feel like they kind of suck at this whole arrangement.
They're not really good at that.
It's like, okay, you want to raise my vibration, then don't scare me in the middle of the freaking night. Like somehow you told me telepathically that at 3 p.m. tomorrow in the middle of a baseball field with some friends around, you know, you're going to slowly appear and we can do this thing. So I don't know why they go about it the way they do. Maybe they don't want to hurt us, but it is terrifying. But you are someone who's made peace with this. So just what advice do you have for someone who's trying to grapple with their own experiences?
Well, I have to tell you, I devised a plan through sheer force of will to overcome my fear. And I used hypnosis, and I gave myself certain words for a rapid self-induction, and conditioned myself not to have that fight or flight response, but to project love toward them. And it made all the difference in the world, because they became very gentle, very concerned. One memory that I have I haven't been taken in about 7 years, but one memory I had of being taken and brought back was that there were 3 of them, and one of them was standing on my bed, and then the other 2 were there sort of tucking me in and measuring everything so that it was just so. And I could feel and hear a little kind of whooshing sound. I don't know if that was their communication or what was going on, but I was kind of amused by how carefully they were tucking me in.
Wow. You know, Kathleen, I want to take you now to your aunt and uncle, Betty and Barney Hill. You've done some painstaking work, you know, ever since their 1961 abduction. You spent 15 years working on this. Tell us about the actual scientific, because you know me, I love the scientific evidence. Tell us about any new evidence, scientific analysis, any physical evidence, because that is the greatest abduction case in the world today.
I have never stopped seeking scientists to evaluate the evidence in this case. And I updated their case in the 60th anniversary edition of Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO Experience. So I can tell you a little bit. I'm not going to reveal everything to you. You have to read the book.
Come on!
Sorry, I have to sell books. But,
all right.
I can tell.
I'm going to have to put you under a bright light. Sit there with an uncomfortable chair and interrogate you. No, go ahead. I'm sorry, Kathleen.
I can tell you that I was, within the past couple of years, up at the University of New Hampshire with Ben. Oh gosh, what's his last name? Hansen. Thank you. Ben Hansen, who used to work for the FBI. And we were examining Betty's dress for a television production that they were doing. And because Ben is just incredibly good at this kind of analysis. So we looked at the outside of the dress and looked at it with a black light. And I know that originally the dress did fluoresce under a black light. It wasn't any longer, I don't think. But then we turned it inside out, and we were looking at the lining of the dress, and where it was torn from waist to hemline, the stitching was torn down on the hem on that side. But we had the front of the dress, And just a little bit to the side where it would have moved over, there were some marks that looked like blood to Ben. And so I collected a sample from one of those marks on the dress lining. Whatever it was did not go through to the exterior of the dress. It came from the inside. It could have been one of two things: urine, which was discounted in the scientific analysis. It wasn't urine up that high. So what was it? Well, that is the area where they inserted a needle into Betty's navel. Now, it was MUFON scientists who did the DNA testing on this. And what was discovered is that it was indeed fluid from Betty's body. I had a disc with Betty's blood on it. And so we had Betty's DNA. In fact, it was so old that they couldn't even determine that it was Betty's blood on that little circle filter paper that I had with Betty's blood on it. And the DNA testing indicated that that was fluid from Betty's body. So this is highly significant because it might mean that Betty actually did have that needle in the navel, and this was fluid that leaked from her navel, body fluid, after she put her dress back on after this occurred. Also, there has been metal found on that dress, and these are very rare, expensive metals with high melting points. And you have to read the book to learn more about that. There's also been an update on Marjorie Fish's analysis of the star map that Betty saw on the craft when she said to the leader, "I know you're not from around here. Was your home port?" And he produced this three-dimensional kind of model of a star map. Some of the stars were connected by solid lines, some by dotted lines. Marjorie Fish did an extraordinary analysis of this, taking many years. She ended up building 14 models of our local galactic neighborhood out 54 light years from our sun in all directions. She still did not have a match until we advanced technologically, and we were able to get better distance data on those stars, how far away they were, the types of stars they were. All of the stars on Betty's map are sun-like stars, although only 5% of the stars out 54 light years in our galactic neighborhood are sun-like. And all of the sun-like stars in that volume of space are on Betty's map. Not only that, it makes sense from one star to another star to travel if you are exploring your local galactic neighborhood. And one of the astronomers who examined this said, if we were spacefaring people who lived on Zeta Reticuli, that is precisely our exploratory route, our exploration of our local galactic neighborhood, because all of those stars are in a plane. So it makes travel from one to another easier. Now, in the update that I talk about in great detail in the book, an astrophysicist has recently taken Betty's model that she drew as the result of a post-hypnotic suggestion by Dr. Benjamin Simon. And she just drew it on paper. And this astrophysicist has sent it through over 2,000 possible models. And still, in the end, Marjorie Fish's identification makes the most sense. nearest star to nearest star.
And can you remind again to our listeners who Marjorie Fish was?
Marjorie Fish was a brilliant woman from Ohio. She was an amateur astronomer, and she read the first book that was ever written about Betty and Barney in 1966, The Interrupted Journey. And in that book, she saw the sketch that Betty had drawn as the result of a post-hypnotic suggestion from Dr. Simon, that she would draw it only if she could remember it accurately and that it didn't bother her too badly. So Marjorie Fish was single, extraordinarily intelligent, and worked on this for many years, going to the university for this distance data, and then building three-dimensional models using monofilament line and beads of various sizes and colors to represent the stars in our local galactic neighborhood out 54 light years. When she finally found this match after several years and we'd moved ahead technologically, Stanton Friedman was called in by Coral Lorenzen, who was the co-director of APRO, the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization. And so Stan went, he met with Marjorie, he spoke to her, he looked at her models, and Coral Lorenzen asked him if he felt that this was credible. And if Marjorie appeared to him to be intelligent and know what she was doing, would he find scientists to vet her work? Well, Stanton told me that Marjorie, he believed, was much better at talking to scientists than to the general population. And Stanton did find 3 scientists who vetted Marjorie's work for accuracy. They all said it was accurate. Dr. Alan Hynek was one of them. He examined that model and did the research at Northwestern University when he was the director of the observatory there. And also the man who worked for the Condon Committee, who was the lead statistician and lead investigator for the Condon Committee, the one who discovered the trick memo was another one. And then another one was the head of the astronomy department at Ohio State University. And by the time he did this with his students, we had computers, early computers. So that was a computer model. And they, at that point, decided that Marjorie's identification of Betty's map was the closest that they could find. So although disinformants, and I have to say, they call themselves skeptics, but they were far too intelligent and knowledgeable to give the assessment that they did. Other astrophysicists with PhDs have examined it and had different ideas than people like Carl Sagan and some of the members of what used to be called SICOP stated about Betty's work and Marjorie's work. Mm-hmm. So I'm very heartened by the new scientific analysis. We continue to collect evidence and have that evidence evaluated by scientists using the latest technology.
Yeah, so exciting. Which, by the way, she'll be sharing at the symposium.
Yes, I will be talking about Betty and Barney and how they have been handled in the media over the years.
Yeah. Oh, Katie's on mute. Katie, you're on mute.
Are you back?
Sorry about that. I didn't realize I was coughing a minute ago, so I muted myself. So I want to switch gears just a tiny bit, because you are such a wealth of information in terms of all the different kinds of cases through the years. You've studied so many. I know you told me one time about a story about a man who had a small airport, and he was pretty terrorized by his experience. But you can tell that one or another one. I'm just wondering, what is like the strangest case that you have come across?
Well, I have to say that his case is the most negative. Well, no, I picked up an attachment from one that was more negative, but his was a case that was originally a MUFON case. And MUFON investigated. In fact, the investigator who went out there saw an unusual light in the sky. And it was investigated by paranormal investigators as well. And they all left, and the man was greatly troubled. He'd seen me on television. And so he came to me individually, not through MUFON, and asked for me to investigate it. And I realized how much support he needed at that point. He was a pilot. He had been a commercial pilot. He had retired, and he had opened a small plane repair business at this little airport in East Texas. And one night he lived on the property, and one night he heard people outside. And so he thought it might be drunken teenagers out there, maybe going to cause damage to his property. So he went out. And what he found was adults who were pointing at two lights in the sky that were the brightest that he had ever seen in all of his years as a pilot. And he became very interested in UFOs at that moment. He had never been before. And so he devised a plan to try to call in these craft to land on his property or to hover over his property. And he was successful in that, but he knew nothing about this topic. So he took a great risk by calling them in, thinking that he was going to sit down at a table and have a conversation and learn everything about them. This case ended up becoming more like what has happened at the Skinwalker Ranch. It's on property that had been Native American property and was given to the white man. There's a Native American reservation very nearby. They were going to become involved in this investigation with me and a paranormal investigator that I was going to go there with. But unfortunately, this man died. He ended up being taken. He ended up having highly negative experiences. One night he was in his hangar doing summer night, doing work with his shirt off, and he just had a claw marks down his chest and down the front of him. At one time, his family did an intervention with him because they thought he was going off the deep end. He was carrying a gun. He was extraordinarily violent in the way he was handling this because he was full of fear and anger and hatred. And he said to his family, "Just do me a favor, stay with me a few days, and I'll prove to you that this is real." So his mother stayed, and he and his mother looked out the window at night, and instead of seeing the runway lights, what they saw was daylight and a grassy savanna, and what they thought was mammoths grazing on that grassy savanna. He was able to catch video evidence of like a light being in his home. He at one time was so distressed by what was going on, he handcuffed himself to the wall. He put boards over the windows. His wife left him. The people who worked for him ended up leaving because of a craft came down very low. he touched it and something sprayed out on all of them. They went into the decontamination area. He ended up becoming extraordinarily ill. There's another time where there was a huge rumble and a crack opened up in the hangar floor, a very large crack, and then something that was like molten lava was oozing up out of that crack. I have the photographs of that. But finally, it became so bad, he ended up leaving the property. He lost everything. He left to and stayed with his mother and his stepfather. And he ended up developing cancer. I don't know if it was caused by his environmental exposure to all of these things that were taking place, but he ended up dying.
Wow. I wanted to kind of expand on this high strangeness, this negative. I mean, what is your take on that? I mean, the scratches and that, is there are some of these maybe negative or have evil intent? And are some of the contact experiences negative in nature and never really turn positive? And some of these high strangeness locations, what do you feel about that?
In these high strangeness locations, it appears never to become positive. And I'm wondering if there was the weaponization of evil a long time ago. Did these Native Americans donate this land to the white man because it was cursed? The history of the Skinwalker Ranch.
Well, it's pretty smart to do that. Say, yeah, here, take it.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
And it was cursed land there. I know of several areas in the United States where there appear to be interdimensional portals that have opened in areas, and all sorts of things are coming in. And it's not positive extraterrestrial beings, or what we think of as extraterrestrial. These are the negative reptilian types with small rogue grays. And there are many different types of grays, and some are positive, very positive. But when you begin to understand the wide array of experiences and different types of entities, even subtypes within a certain model like the grays, you realize that it's not all one thing. It becomes very complex. And some of it's highly negative, some of it's highly positive. But in between that, you have about 80% that is really very much scientifically oriented, and also concern about humans, like I have mentioned earlier in this interview.
Interesting.
Kathleen, question for you here. I read an article that you gained access to files that reveal remarkable evidence of the government's secret interest in communicating with non-human extraterrestrials. And have they actually done that? I mean, the government, I know individuals have, but the actual government has been in communication. And I'll tell you the reason why they ask that. If they have, and they haven't learned their lesson, because there's always a sinister side to ufology. Like you mentioned, there's an evil side to ufology that we have to overcome. And I'm just wondering, have you gotten those documents? Have you seen where we've been in communication with them?
Well, I learned about this experiment through my Aunt Betty Hill. And she had a letter from Helen Knowles that talked about the top brass from the U.S. government going up to her house. She was married to Rear Admiral Herbert Knowles. And in 1954, this was taking place. Jacques Vallée talked about a CIA experiment that was, I know it was related to this because I have the correspondence files between Admiral Knowles and Wilbert Smith, brilliant scientist from the Canadian government, and the man who was at the head of the Canadian government's UFO desk. Now, my aunt and uncle, I know, used to go to Admiral Knowles' home, and they would meet with people from the Navy and also people from the Canadian military, and who knew what was happening way back in the 1960s. And, you know, this dates all the way back to 1954. And even before that, when Wilbert Smith made a visit to Washington, D.C., to the Canadian Embassy, and asked for information about what the U.S. government knew about UFOs, and was able to acquire that information. All of this information is in the private correspondence files that I was able to get after many years of trying from Admiral Knowles' granddaughter. And it concerned his investigation and Wilbert Smith's investigation of a woman who claimed to be in contact with these extraterrestrials. And she was channeling, you might say. She didn't use the word channeling. She said that she was receiving these telepathic messages and then speaking it or writing it for members of the government. Now, I'm aware that this went on because Grant Cameron, a Canadian researcher and government researcher, has some of Wilbert Smith's files. And some of these files list members of the government who were involved in this investigation. And there was a Commander Larson who was involved in all of this. I have the files from the FBI and released through the Freedom of Information Act that talks about all of this and how government officials went to meet with Francis Swan. And when they discovered that it wasn't through conventional means, this communication, they turned around and went back to Washington. What it doesn't say is that very secret meetings ensued, and how Commander Larson learned to communicate with these extraterrestrials, as did Wilbert Smith and Admiral Knowles. They were looking for scientific evidence that any of this was real. It was highly secret. Mrs. Swan's information was not made public, was not until much later. And so, yes, the government was involved. And initially, Mrs. Swan took this, a thick packet of information to Admiral Knowles. And and a letter she had written to Dwight Eisenhower. And Admiral Knowles read all of this and realized that the information given to Mrs. Swan was far above her level of education or understanding. And so he wrote a letter to Dwight Eisenhower. And this brought the military top brass up to Maine, to his home and to Francis Swan's home. So there is a great deal of information about that now. I wonder if we'll ever get all of the information, because I know it has to be classified.
Yeah, well, and we just appreciate all the digging that you have done all of these years. We're down to like our last 2 minutes, and we certainly want to mention books, but I want to put this little nugget out there from what I'm getting from you, and that is, it's important to protect yourself, trust your gut. There are some negative things that may not turn positive, but what I'm really getting out of this conversation from you is project love, because I think that's another way of just protecting yourself and drawing in a kinder situation. But most importantly, let's not judge anybody that does have a negative experience. That's one of my big missions in this field, is to help people with that, because some people just don't come away going, oh, it was so wonderful and I'm best friends with the ETs. This is a really intense thing. You've done that intense work to become okay with it. But a lot of people just still have a long way to go on that. So just protect yourself, people. I want to put that out there.
Really good points, Katie.
Will not feed those negative entities. Project love. That's important.
Project the love.
Put the love out there.
Yes, love Chris. Kathleen, we love you. And I want to mention your books. And I also want to mention where people can go to get more information. I know you have Science Was Wrong. It's a great book. I love that book. The Alien Abduction Files, Fact, Fiction, and Flying Saucers, Extraterrestrial Contact. I have Captured right here, another great one, with the one and only Stanton Friedman. So I hope that our listeners go out there and get the whole collection of Kathleen's book, because like Katie and Chris stated, she is just a wealth of knowledge. So Kathleen, is that your email there, KathleenMarden.com? Please go to her site. And she had mentioned groups. What groups, very quickly, have like less than a minute here, but I know you have groups for experiencers.
Yes, I facilitate Awakening Souls. And you can go to my website. You can find a link. It is for people who have an understanding of all of this, have worked through the trauma, and feel a calling to reach out to others to help them.
I love that. I love that. We appreciate you so much for taking the time. I know you've been so busy. I'm looking forward to hanging out with you in Denver. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Amanda Curran, the co-producer, and Bill Skywatcher, the producer. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Chris. Next week, we have, speaking of high strangeness areas, and we'll really dig into that topic. We have the one and only James Keenan joining us next week. Thank you to all our listeners, and we will see you all next Tuesday night. Have a great rest of your week, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.